Some players leave a one-of-a-kind impression, an impression very few can match or even surpass. Influence that's not based on numbers, but simply impact, because greatness can't be always told through statistics only. And today we talk about Chicago's very own Derrick Rose and how he influenced the game, has legendary stories about him. We talk about the ups, the downs, and the middle grounds, and covered in sports. So let's put it into context. After that 6th championship in the 90s, Michael Jordan retired for the second time. Scottie Pippen got traded to the Rockets. So the dynasty was pretty much over. And after that, we seen many dark years with Chicago. They didn't have a star. It was pretty bleak. They had Elton Brand for a little while in the early 2000s, but they ended up trading him. Jay Williams got injured his second year, or after his first year, so Chicago didn't have anybody to take the throne. Now, who's better than Derrick Rose, a homegrown legend? D. Rose was already highly touted since middle school. He played alongside Eric Gordon on an AAU team. They balled out. They almost went to the same college, but they chose different paths. And D. Rose ended up playing with Memphis 1 year under John Calipari, and that's when that John Calipari mania started brewing, even though he went and took his talents to Kentucky. D. Rose played that 1 year for Memphis and almost, like Carmelo, won the championship in only 1 year. But they ended up losing to Mario Chalmers, in the championship round, so that was pretty exciting to see. But as soon as D. Rose hit the league, he was already instantly popular because he was known on the AAU circuit. He was a top 5 or number 5 ranked prospect in the nation before going to Memphis. So he was already known, but when he hit the league, he instantly started to bubble. You started seeing him on Slam magazine covers. The league was buzzing. They finally had another star in Chicago that they could cover. And the city of Chicago itself were just happy they had another person, another legend leading the team. And Derrick Rose balled out his first playoffs. 36 points, 11 assists. That's a playoff record for his first game. You knew it was going to be exciting, so Derrick Rose kicked off another era for the Chicago Bulls, almost after about a decade of being irrelevant and being a pretty bad team. And it only took 3 years for D. Rose to become legendary. That's pretty wild when you think about it, because for his first year he averaged 16.8 and 6 assists, which is pretty good, almost 17 points, and you had 6 assists. We all know Derrick Rose is more of a scorer, and his scoring opens up the game, and it didn't even take long for him to adjust his game or adjust his game speed so that he was ready, because in that year he had a playoff record against the Celtics the first round. Even though they lost in 5 games, his playoff performance of 36 points and 11 assists, that's amazing for anybody. And the Chicago Bulls knew they had a star in the making, if not one that was already there in the flesh. The highlights that came with the playoff performance, you could still watch him in awe. And that was just his first year. But it only took 3 seasons. Even though he wasn't an all-star in his first year, he ended up becoming an all-star in his second year while averaging only 21 points. But back then, you got to remember, it wasn't such a scoring-heavy league. It was harder to get those buckets. So it's even more admirable that he became an all-star in only his second year. Now, some may say that's the Eastern Conference. It's kind of weak, and especially then, but I still give him the nod. When you look at it in hindsight, it only took him 3 years to reach his apex, and maybe that's just what we've seen. Maybe that wasn't even his highest potential because he was still so young, but to average 21 points in your second year, 17 in your first year, countless highlights, and then you're ready for the next season. And we all know what Derrick Rose did in his third season, so he was a sight to see. And what better to be the first pick, playing for Chicago, you're making a name, no one can say anything about you because you're fulfilling what people think a first pick should do. Every game, you're showing them more, you got more height, you got more hops. He just had it all. So the fact that it only took him 3 seasons to accomplish so much says volumes. Now let's not forget, it only took him that same 3 seasons to become MVP. He averaged 25 points, 4.1 rebounds per game, 7.7 assists, almost 8, and he averaged 1 steal to go with it. And he won MVP. Now some may say he only won due to LeBron being the villain at the time because he decided to leave Cleveland in that whole fiasco known as The Decision. You can watch a documentary on it, but we all remember that time when LeBron was deciding which team he would go to. People didn't know if he was going to go back to Cleveland, if he was going to go join Derrick Rose, possibly go to Chicago, but that was far-fetched. Or maybe even go to New York. He ended up going, to Miami and forming the Heatles. And we know what they did to every team in the league. But Derrick Rose was the guy for that season. He ended up being the youngest MVP ever. And we have to appreciate how special that is when you think about him being the number one pick for Chicago, a franchise that was dormant for a long time. They were mediocre right until getting him, but those years after Michael Jordan departed were very dark. They were starless almost. And for Derrick Rose to come in and in 3 seasons, he made the Bulls back relevant. They're in the playoffs. Talks of going to the finals. He averages 25 points for his 3rd year. It was the best thing you could ask for. And he played 81 games, 37 minutes, his highest of his career, 37.4 minutes per game, shooting 44%. Not too good, but he was on the tear still. Derrick Rose not a prolific scorer, but the way he scored was definitely prolific. With the spin moves and having the vert he had, it's no telling. We really don't know. Now, if LeBron did play with Cleveland, you could say that he would have just won another MVP. But the fact that the person they gave it to is someone who is in the hearts of many basketball fans, Derrick Rose, I don't think it gets any better than that. Now, 2011 was a long time ago. 2010, 2011 season, that was ages ago. But it also was very long ago when you think about sports, how they change so often. You have new stars, new coaches, new owners. And back then, we talk about how Derrick Rose averaged 25 points to win MVP. A lot of people feel like you can't do that now. That's not going to happen. Maybe Jokic, but he'd be averaging a triple-double to go with the 25 points. He'd have 11 assists, 12 rebounds, something crazy, because we're in a different time. But at that time, there wasn't that many prolific scorers. You had a KD, a Carmelo, a Kobe in 2010, 2011. It was a very different game. You didn't have the scoring you do now. You got to thank Lillard for that. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, the Splash Brothers. Shout out to James Harden, Luka. These guys exist in an age where the game was changing. Derrick Rose would have, been in that same wave if he was healthy. But he played in a time where you basically had to earn every bucket. There was still a healthy Dwight in the paint. A lot of forwards, were still more of the traditional power forward. But it was changing then to the stretch forward. So now you don't really see big men in the paint. They're shooting threes. Like, our best big men can shoot threes. It's arguable that Giannis, out of the 3 of Joel, Jokic, Giannis, he shoots the worst when it comes to the 3-pointers. But that just tells you how much of a time we're in a different era, because the 7-foot player or 7 feet players, they can shoot threes like it's nothing and swish them, and they could just shoot those all game and probably get 20 points. But Derrick Rose played in a time where people were still posting up. It was more of a layup package back then. You had to fight for every bucket. He was getting those points at the free throw. So when you think about 25 points, it's not the 25 points of now where you got 7 to 10 3-point attempts in one game for one star player. We all know Derrick Rose would have got to that point where he was shooting threes crazy and making them. Of course, not on the Lillard level or the Curry level. That's just the highest you can go. But he definitely played in a time where you had to earn every bucket and make every move count. Now, I know I'm not the only one that got emotional when Derrick Rose scored 50 when he was on the Timberwolves in 2018. That just sent shockwaves through the whole hooping community, basketball fans, because we just missed Derrick Rose's play, and it was a retro Rose game where we got to see some of the stuff he did every game back in the days when he was healthy. And it just made you feel like, man, we know he has it, always will have it, but we just missed them times. And it was just nostalgic for all the people who grew up watching Derrick Rose and being inspired by him. It was definitely a chills up the spine moment. And any fan who was watching Derrick Rose definitely saw that game. It may have dropped one tear or two. I can't blame you. I won't judge you. But when we talk about D Rose, we're just reminiscing on a player who brought glory back to a franchise who was lacking in that category for almost a decade. He was the number 1 pick overall, played in college, almost won a championship in 1 year. There's so many things I can say on Derrick Rose. His impact can't be measured in numbers only. He's almost like an Allen Iverson to me, but if he would have played longer, we would have gotten more of the impact overall. as opposed to just on the court. And that's what I got for this video. You know, shout out to Derrick Rose, shout out to the NBA. Thank you for all the people that's watching and supporting and subscribing. Like and subscribe if you're into that. That's Covered in Sports. Peace.